Hello, this is Hubert. I'm the CEO of Wildcatters, and you are listening in on the Wildcatters podcast. This is our first one that's with an interview. We have Dr. Harvey Castro here with us today, and Harvey is many things. So number one, he's a physician, an ER physician, ER specialist. He's an accomplished entrepreneur. He comes from a family of immigrants. He has not just done his own entrepreneurial thing, but also in been involved with other entrepreneurial things and tell us a lot about it. But as you know, we highlight successful healthcare entrepreneurs here at Wildcatters. It's my distinct pleasure to have Harvey on as our first guest here. So Harvey, welcome and good to see you.
It's an honor to be on, and thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Harvey, I knew a lot about you, but I knew a lot more after I read the book that you wrote. And it's behind you, but I've got a copy too here. And so this is an amazing story of how you beat a lot of odds and how you're now willing and able to share that information with others. So I think at the first, I want to just ask some of the things that formed your life and informed your life. And you touch upon family in your book a lot, and oftentimes we won't go that far back when we talk to a healthcare entrepreneur, but I think in your case it is, first of all, not just trivial but extremely important, and also shows us a lot about who you are and why you're here today. So tell us a little bit about how you grew up and your family.
So I grew up in New York City. My mom had me at about 16 years old. She had to drop out of school, and she had to go get her GED. And, at early in life, I didn't realize I was at a disadvantage until later in life. But I realized we were on food stamps. We were literally in poverty. I remember often my uncle would come bring us food, and I thought he was just bringing us food, but I didn't really realize that it was because we didn't have food. I really noticed a lot of cheese around the house and milk and abundance of cheese, and I thought, what is this? And it really hit me when we went to the grocery store and we used this funny looking money. I'm like, what's this money? Later, I realized that it was the way, I was growing up. And so early on in my early life, I realized, hey, I don't have a lot of the tools that I wish I had. And I noticed, like a lot of things were luxury. And then it was common for me, I remember at age 5 in kindergarten, walking to school and my mom telling me, hey, when you walk home, don't tell anybody, but here's your key and get in, and then I'll be working, but I'll be home tonight. And so early in life, I noticed I needed to be more responsible. I had to grow up quickly. I had to look out for myself living in New York City. And so that environment at first, it may seem harsh in the sense that, oh my gosh, I know personally I would never do that to my kids, but the environment my mom was in, she had to. But that really gave me the foundation to become who I am. It really gave me what I call a strong why. Why do I do all these things? And I think it goes back to my childhood. And like you said, normally we don't talk about family or background, but my family was interesting in the sense that I had my mom, that to me was my idol and my everything. And then I had my dad. Unfortunately, he was an alcoholic, abusive, and my mom left him when I was a baby, and always told me, be careful with your dad. If he ever sees you, he's going to want to take you. And I'll just jump right in the book. And part of the book, I talk about being kidnapped by my father. And, in today's standard, there's no way a parent can kidnap another child. But back in the 70s, I remember mom telling me she went to the police and they were like, well, that's the father and there's nothing we can do. And she literally kidnapped me. So on both sides of the parent spectrum, I had one that was my advocate, but then another that was abusive and not the ideal parent for me. And so on the point that you asked is, how does family make a role? It was great having a role model. That time with my mom, and still is to most of the extent. And then also knowing what I didn't want to be, the parent that my dad was to me. I didn't want to be that family member to anyone or have anyone in like that in my life. And so it gave me both polarities of life of saying, hey, this is who I want to be, and here's who I don't want to be. And unfortunately, that was for me. I didn't want to be like my dad.
Yeah, and sometimes that if you're an entrepreneur, I think you're showing that right there. Then you can take that example just as much and say, well, I'm not going to be like that. And so teaching can be either way. I already told you I'm your mom's number 2 fan after reading the book. I won't cede number 1. You're clearly number 1 fan. but you have just stopping off there wouldn't be enough. So I mean, you have powered through a lot of stuff, and but you never forgot where you came from. And I know a lot of us kind of dwell on past failures or past difficulties as an explanation for why things couldn't work. But one of the traits of an entrepreneur is to look forward. Doesn't mean you ignore what you had. You look forward and look where you can go from there. But in your case too, not just did you do that, you also never forgot where you came from. And so can you explain a little bit about how you match that up? Because I'm imagine when you were in medical school, not a lot of kids were there that were kidnapped.
No. It's interesting you mentioned that. For me, when I was in medical school, I remember one of the things that was glaring. I remember being in class and talking to my colleagues and like, oh, I already know this and that. And I said, how do you know these drugs? How do you know this pathology? I study my butt off. I should be as good as you. And he'd laugh at me and say, Harvey, my friends, my mom and dad and my grandfather, they're all doctors. What do you think we spoke about during lunch and dinner? We would talk about the new drugs coming out. And it's like interesting, that was not my upbringing. My upbringing was going to my mom and saying, hey, mom, help me with this. And she's like, Harvey, you already outgrew me. Like, I can't. I can help you with other things in life, but I really can't even do this right now. And you need to just study harder. And so it made it hard for me in the sense that, I didn't have these things. But going back to who I am and what I grew up with, I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for where I come from and who I am. And you're right, I don't forget where I came from. And I think it actually makes a better entrepreneur in the sense that I'm grateful for what I have and what I've accomplished and what I've done. And so, for me, I feel blessed to have a roof over my head and some food and shelter. And to me, that's the world. So it's really hard. If that is my standard, if that's amazing to me, then everything else is just a plus. Everything else is like a cherry on top. And so when it comes to businesses, I just feel blessed that I'm able to work on these things. And to your point about not forgetting your roots, one of our locations, I run emergency rooms, has a homeless issue. And the landlord actually today called me and saying, hey, this homeless issue is an issue and stop feeding the homeless. And I'm like, interesting you say that to me because I grew up in New York City. I know what it is, people being homeless and without food. So it's really difficult for me to say no to someone that's homeless or not feed them, not take care of them. That's what I do. I'm in healthcare. And so because I have such a strong why, because I grew up where I did and the place I grew up, I think it's a lot easier for me to relate to those things. And I don't forget my roots. I constantly tell my kids, hey, don't forget where you come from and don't forget where you came from. Today, actually, I was writing a little post on my grandfather. My grandfather is 87 years old. And every time I see him, I'm like, Granddad, thank you for coming to the United States. Because if I was born in another country, I don't think I'd be where I am today. So I'm really grateful. So again, you got to remember where you come from. I think it's so important.
I mean, it's true. There's a lot of not a lot of kids that were kidnapped that go into medical school, and especially with your story. So let's pivot a little bit into the entrepreneurial sphere. I consider myself an entrepreneur now, having started Health Wildcatters, but I did not get started as early as you did. So tell us about your first, I imagine, several entrepreneurial business, or you choose.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of them just to kind of give a glimpse. I think thinking outside the box and having a strong why helps you become an entrepreneur. I think entrepreneurs in general, they see a problem and they want to fix it. And because the way they fix it, it's invented, they invent something or think outside the box. For me, my first entrepreneurship was, I worked at my first job was being a health food store, a real big job. And the manager said to me, learn all these vitamins and big picture. That's how I became a doctor, because I learned the vitamins, the science, and I wanted to learn more of the traditional science. But for the picture of entrepreneurship, I told my manager, I'm like, look, I'm looking at your invoices and I noticed that if we buy more, you get more of a discount. Why don't you pass that discount to me and I'll increase your volume and I'll start selling. So I started my first business and I started selling on the margin, basically family, friends, telling them this herb is good for this vitamin is good for that. And I literally made enough money to pay for my first car, my first insurance, for home, for rent, and I was helping my mom and going to school. And that thinking outside the box, that strong why helped me get there. Later, when I wanted to go to med school, I didn't have the money and resources, so I thought outside the box. I went to the local bookstore and I said, "Hey, what if I review these books for you and I make them a corner in your bookstores, medical student Harvey Castro's corner?" And I basically picked all the different sciences, microbiology, physiology, all the good stuff in med school, and I had my own corner and I would recommend certain books. Well, in return, he gave me free books. So I was able to get free books in med school, and I actually was able to make money off of this. I got to talk to the major book publishers, and I got to have workshops with them and tell them how I think the book should be formatted and what they should be doing. And back then, the big thing was Palm Pilots, and I was like, hey, we need to start moving to more digital and ebooks, and I was really pushing the book companies to do that. And retrospect, that's what we do now. But it was interesting to be in the forefront, and all these books that were published had my name on it because I helped edit those books, pathology books, different types of books in medicine.
There's another piece that speaks to your person. First of all, I want everyone to know that this book that you wrote is a book that helps step by step for someone to evaluate their own situation and improve the situation, and provides a formula along the way. So it's a lot of fun to read, and you can use it as a workbook as well. And so anything you try in entrepreneurship, you got to go for it and do it. And then you don't look back at your misfires, because there will be some. You just look forward and deal with what is a success. And in your book, you go through a lot of that. But maybe, I don't know if you want to kind of give a little bit of thought on that part and why you ended up writing this the way it is written, because it's a little bit unusual in the sense that it tells you a personal story, but at the same time, also is a formula for somebody else to use.
Yeah, good. I wanted the book to be fun to read. I want it to be relatable. As physicians, that some of them that are on this podcast listening, we all can relate to patients. We've seen a million patients, and we can go in a room and you can almost feel the vibe and know which way you're going, and if the patient likes you or not, and what's wrong with the patient pretty quickly because you've done it so long. In the book, I wanted to bring that experience into it. I wanted to make it relatable to someone that doesn't have an MD or never gone to college to read it and say, these are interesting principles. And I wanted to put my personal stories, because I feel like the stories that I've been through kind of make a point. And I almost feel like my background and who I am from beginning till now has shaped this story and has made me who I am. And I feel like those tools and the things that have gone, I figure if I can share the story and then it ingrain a principle, share another story, another principle, then a person that's reading the book from A to Z that's never done anything in that world can say, wow, I see a different angle of starting a business or following my dreams. And so the book ended up being more motivational and, like you said, more of the blueprints of how to be successful, because I feel like in generality, there are certain things that help make you more successful.
But the point you're making in the book is anyone can do it, and don't spend your time on excuses. Spend your time on trying stuff, and when it doesn't go right.
Love what you just said. And that is exactly what my goal was. I wanted to show others, hey, if I grew up with this and no one's giving me handouts and helping me, and no one's being there to say, hey, Harvey, you need to be a doctor. Hey, here, I'm your mentor and I've been there. Then it's a lot tougher to get there. Not that it's impossible, it's a little tougher. And nothing against those that have those mentors and those tools, but it's a lot tougher. So that's exactly one of the points I wanted to make. It's like, hey, if I can do this and I can get to this point, I sincerely think you can do the same, especially if your starting block is different from mine. I think you can get a lot further.
That's really cool. I really enjoyed that. So when we talk about physicians, you and I, I'm sure, have seen the same thing. There's a lot of, even with those that had a running start, you beat yourself up over so many years. You got to be great in high school, to be great in college, to be great in med school, to get into a great residency, and maybe do a fellowship. And what we see thereafter very often is been deprived for such a long time that people just jump into work and then kind of shut down everything else. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying you really have deprived yourself for a very long time of what other people would, have normal lives. You've been up all night for years and years and years, and obviously you continue you continue with that in emergency medicine. But in any case, you long for some sort of normalcy in your life and be able to have a family, and so very often that part of our curiosity just does not have capacity to do anything else but just execute and apply your skills. But we're also speaking to healthcare entrepreneurs here. Not just do we have a successful example in you here, but we also have listeners who are interested in healthcare entrepreneurship. And on the physician side, we know there are a lot of people that have been trained for a long, long time to be primed for innovation, and then very often just shy away from that.
I think part of it, we're doctors and we're successful, and sometimes it's the fear of failing. We are successful doctors. The community covets, doctors and holds us up high. And sometimes that alone can be a distraction, and it could be an impediment, because now you're like, well, do I want to venture out and do something different? Do I want to possibly fail? And that alone can be scary, because all your life you've succeeded, and you've succeeded in medicine. What if you try to get outside of that box, or what if you try to own the business? You're not trained for that, and that could be scary, and that alone can hold you back. On the entrepreneur side, one tip that I always tell my entrepreneurs is, and I put this in the first chapter of the book, always work towards your goal. Don't worry about getting there quickly. Worry about getting there. I'll share a quick story and to kind of really push that driving point. I always wanted to write a book when I was in med school, and I wrote a book in neurology. I got it published, and basically it was self-published. But once I got it published, I was so embarrassed about the book, and I thought, well, what if it's not good? I literally increased the price where I knew nobody would buy it. I hid the book, and I thought, this was about 15 years ago, I just left it be. About a couple of months ago, I said, why am I doing this? I always wanted to write a book. I wrote the book, and then take it all the way. I said, you know what? I redid the book. I republished. And now my colleagues that are reading my books are like, oh my God, you held this back for over 15 years. Why did you do that? My point of the story is my goal, I slowed down. I didn't get there, but eventually I did get there. So my tip is go towards your goal. Don't worry about the speed. For me, it took me over 15 years to get there, but I got there. But the point is, I got there. So for the entrepreneurs out there that are really dreaming of doing something, your goal is to get to your goal. Doesn't matter if you get there tomorrow, in a year, 10 years, the goal is to get to the goal. And so slowly get there. For some, it may be speedy. For some, maybe other, whatever it is, but you want to get to your goal.
So tell us a little bit about your current business and how that's working, and how it gives you, I guess, another 3 hours every day to worry about stuff.
Yeah, so my business partner and I started a company here in Dallas-Fort Worth called Trusted Medical Centers. In less than 3 years, we now have 7 locations. Next month, we'll have our 8th. It's a freestanding ER. I know you've personally been to our Hillcrest location, so thank you for your support. We also basically have wound care, pediatric urgent care, but our bread and butter is the emergency room, and that's what we have. We also have our first hospital in Mansfield, Texas. And so we literally took all the things that I have learned from the freestanding market, why we should open, why we shouldn't. All over Dallas and actually all over Texas, they have failed. I would say 80% of the players are gone now, and there's only 20% out there. And so why are we succeeding when everybody else, the majority, are failing? And so my business partner and I looked at it as a science. And so we said, okay, these are the things that make a business successful. And these are the reasons why these freestandings close. And these are the reasons why they keep open. And so that's what we're doing. We're looking at it as a scientific approach and saying, these are the things we need to do. And so I'm really loving my job. We have over 350 employees. We're growing. I personally love what I get to do now. Instead of seeing a patient and doing one-on-one, now I'm able to train doctors, the company, have a vision, and see how we can do things differently for that patient. So now I'm looking at medicine a little bit differently. I'm working on the big organization, our bylaws, how we do things, how we treat patients. I'm training them. And then I'm also taking time and working with the TV station, NBC, Telemundo, and being a medical correspondent and doing a different type of medicine, more on TV and shaping healthcare, but in a different angle. So it's a different time in my life right now, but it's a lot of fun. It's actually different from when I went to med school and I thought I'd be a doctor, now I'm thinking, well, I can still be a doctor, but it's just a different way of being a doctor.
Where does Harvey Castro go from here? Because I mean, you just taught us that you gotta have those far-flung goals that you go after, and you've shown persistence. You've had the support of your number one fan for many, many years.
So right now, believe it or not, I went back to get my MBA. So in December, I graduate with my MBA. So I'm excited. It's a big deal for me, but that's one of the things I wanted to do. I had three things I wanted to do when I was in high school. One was become a doctor. Second, believe it or not, I wanted my MBA or have a business. And then third, I wanted to go into politics. And so my goal now is to start seeing how I can serve more in a different way our community and start the foundations of giving. And for now, we started a pantry at all our locations that we're building out. For anyone that needs food, they can come to our parking lot. We'll have a special place that's a pantry 24/7, and they can come in and grab any food they need. And then, no questions asked. We won't even know. We'll just keep filling it up. And then also we're doing other nonprofit things for our company. So I'm really excited. And so that's the next phase for me is what can I do for the community? How can I help others? And then down the road, I feel like I'm still young. 10 years, 20 years from now, I do want to run for Congress. That is my next goal in life. And I figure I still have some time to get there. And so between now and then, my goal is just continue helping, continue being me. The other part that is really growing over the last year, I just really feel like now is the time to give back. God forbid I die tomorrow or something happens. I want to know that I am still giving back. So the food pantry, the giving back program, all these things that we're doing, I want to continue to grow that. And so for me, the next 5-10 years is really making that more of a priority for me to do in the community. Ultimately, I would love to be able to just volunteer at a clinic and help and work for free. And that's what I would be helping others and, just find a clinic. Ideally, I would love to start my own free clinic. And so that's in the horizon that we are actively looking at getting donations and how to go about doing that. And so I think at the end of the day, my message to everyone listening is, be the best person you can be and have fun. I know we talked about a lot of stuff that I'm doing, but I also want to say, hey, I do take every day time for myself. It may not be a long time. I may say, hey, like for example, tonight, I'm making it a point to go for a walk. I'm going to see the sunset, enjoy, and that's something that's going to replenish my energy today. This week, I'm going to make sure that I take my kids out. We're going to go for a walk or do fun activities. So I know for sure this weekend, in my mind, I already have some board games that I have picked out that we're going to play cards and do bonding things. So I think it's important to work hard, but it's also important to take time for your family and your loved ones and for yourself and do something for your mind that that you're resetting. And it's not just work, that you're also rewarding yourself, that you're also making time for yourself. So whatever you're doing, whatever you're dreaming, make sure you're also making time for you.
So that's very well put. I think that often overlooked to find a balance, even for entrepreneurs, when a lot of them take it as a badge of honor to work 18, 20 hours or whatever craziness. It's not sustainable.
You'll be surprised how much your brain is thinking while you're sleeping, how much it's analyzing and processing. So take a minute, take a deep breath, think about whatever it is, whatever problem, think of it as a child's eyes looking at it, and then sleep on it. And you'll be surprised. You'll be shocked, actually, how many solutions you'll find the next day or two that you're like, wow, I hadn't even thought of that. And all of a sudden it just popped in my head. Well, actually, you have been thinking. You just subconsciously have been thinking about it, just not thinking about it consciously. So those are just general tips. And I have found those really useful for me.
So very good advice, Harvey. And the sleeping for sure. That helps a lot. Well, that's it for today. So again, thank you very much, Dr. Harvey Castro, for joining us here today. To anybody listening out there, I look forward to interacting with you, also with you connecting with Dr. Castro, and hope to see you and hear you on our next podcast.
Thank you.